Welcome, Wargamers, to the hard-fought battlegrounds of Ea, because today we are talking about a new product from Bellum, the lore campaign pack, Crucible of Wills, the Stoneface campaign. Now, this was kindly sent over to me by the Bellum guys, because they know how much I adore lore content and narrative gaming and stuff like that. But I have got to be honest with you. I did not expect what was in this box, and I kind of cracked for a second. I had to pause, and then I wrote an entire separate video's worth of notes about how cool I thought it was as a product, so I'll leave a link to that down below. But in this video, we're going to talk about the story that's contained. For real though, I definitely had this moment where I paused and I was like, why the actual F isn't every other company doing stuff like this? And while it is cool as a narrative supplement to get new people playing and educated about the game, of course, there's also a great story here. Complete with character models that let you bring that story to your tabletop. Specifically, it features the Dweghom, which is the Bellum archetype of dwarves, but more interesting in my opinion. And then the 100 Kingdoms, the humble human race desperately fighting to survive against all these truly horrific enemies around them. So it's awesome. One thing I like to say, if you're interested in this product, or any kind of wargaming stuff, if you need paint, supplies, whatever, please consider using one of the affiliate links in my description down below. As you can see from the Bellum one there, you'll save a bunch of money on your purchases through those links, and every time you do, it goes directly to supporting me, my wife, our cats, the whole channel, and I could not be more thankful to all of you. It really is life-changing stuff. So let's start talking about the story here, okay? What is this campaign ultimately about? What is, if we were to look inside the Encyclopedia Britannica in the Bellum universe that they've created, what would the entry on the Stoneface campaign say? Well, let's introduce a few things. So there exists a city within the 100 Kingdoms known as Pravia. It's fairly well fortified. It's home to a large sect of the theist church in the area, so it's quite religious, but well defended. It's not, it's not out in the boonies is what I'm trying to say. And this city is preparing for a celebration, a city-wide party, okay? One heck of a hootenanny, complete with a parade and a religious ceremony honoring a person known as Baron Michael von Kirschbauer, who is a religious firebrand who's basically making big waves in the church. He's trying to elevate himself and his career. Essentially, he wants to become a living saint, right? It's a power move within the church, and essentially all of this is a means to that end. He's won an artifact in battle, and he intends to have this big parade and party honoring himself, marching the artifact up the road, laying it at the temple's stoop, and blessing it right there. Essentially a win for the church, but more importantly, evidence of my personal sainthood. And the basic thing here is that other people are seeing is that he's trying to get so much energy and positive reinforcement and the crowd on his side that the church would really have a hard time not giving him what he wants without losing face. Now, that in and of itself is really not a big deal, right? There's a lot of politicking that happens amongst the organized orthodoxical religions, especially when they're built into kind of the functions of the state, like they are in the 100 Kingdoms. Not something that would garner much attention otherwise. The Imperial Chamberlain, kind of overseeing this region, he's trying to be prudent and dispatches one of his best officers to go to Pravia and just make sure things don't get out of hand. We're going to have a bunch of people who are ecstatic for their hero. We're going to have a bunch of, just drinking, celebrating. And this is a government agency. They're not part of the church, but it's obvious, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of religious fervor. Just go with a contingent and make sure everyone's okay. Make sure the parade goes off without a hitch, that the religious leaders have enough security and so on. Basically, just go be a good guy. The officer that this Chamberlain dispatches to do this is our first character and one of the models you get in this box, Eric Schur. And he's got a great story that I will cover in a dedicated video. But to put it shortly, he's a very no-nonsense, very blunt person. If he were a spice, he'd be flour, but he gets the job done so well. And when his forces arrive in the area, he starts, kind of taking command of the local garrison, reinforcing stuff, and he starts looking through the different reports that the city of Pravia was receiving in the time. And actually, he notes something that's very interesting, is that there's been a huge spike in Dweghom attacks. Specifically Vanguard forces, they're probing the defenses of Pravia. Now, the Pravian Guard wouldn't know that. They don't go out and Conquest much, but Eric Schur, being an experienced veteran, he's like, oh no, we're being sized up for something. So he immediately sends a message back to the Chamberlain, hey, something's not right here. Something's going on. And basically, Eric Schur is authorized to raise an entire army in Pravia. They're like, oh, you think something's going down? Unleash the bank accounts. And all of a sudden, Eric Schur can conscript and hire a whole bunch of guard. And so I want to pause our story there for just a second. And we're going to shift gears to another story that's going on that's going to seem irrelevant, but bear with me. Because now we're going to talk about the Dweghom. Hundreds of years before the city of Pravia or even humans settled the area that became known as the 100 Kingdoms, the dwarves were slaves. Specifically, they were created by the dragons of Ea to act as a slave race. While their masters slept, the dwarves kept digging deeper and deeper, harvesting resources, minerals, all the things that the dragons would want when they woke up. And that is until they dug so deep that they touched something terrible, an aspect of primordial power known only as war. And in that moment, the race of what we call dwarves, who are essentially near automatons, gained the spark of sentience that they needed to now see that their situation is what it is, right? Their lives, their toils, everything, it's all a lie. And this is what separates Dweghom from dwarves in the Parabellum universe. They exist side by side. There are still dwarves in the setting, but they don't have minds like the Dweghom do. Now, this event kind of spread all across Ea, but I'm going to limit our discussion to one location known as Dweghom. Ghe'Domn. Here, the dwarves that touched the element of war turned on their dragon master, just like it happened all over the place. There was a big period of time where slaying dragons was the primary goal of every Dweghom army. It took hundreds and hundreds of lives to do so, but eventually, the monster was brought down low. And the dragon, whose name I am not even going to try to pronounce because Parabellum just doesn't like me, I guess. I don't know, man. They made this thing way too complicated. The dragon dies at the hands of 12 Dweghom, specifically. That is to say, in the final chamber of the big battle, when it was all over and the dragon was dead, 12 dudes were left standing within this particular hold. So to celebrate, they dipped their swords in the dragon's blood and retempered them as powerful artifacts, the dragon swords. Each bearer of these swords was, in a sense, worthy to be a Reg in their own right, their own hold leader. And that brings us forward to the more current era, which is why Dweghom is so unique. It has multiple distinct Dweghom clans in one location. Normally, a hold is just dominated by one clan, but this is an ecosystem. They killed this beast together, and working as a collective is a part of it. It's fundamental to their memory and their understanding of their own freedom and liberty. Now, since that epic founding, things have gotten rough, right? It's been hundreds of years. A lot of the world has changed around them. 3 of those 12 clans are just straight up lost to attrition and infighting. They just kind of got eroded away. A further 3 have started to fray and cause a more meaningful division, almost like an internal civil war. My point is that Dweghom is very fractured at the time of this, and the Supreme Ray, the one who kind of keeps all the lesser ones in line, is Rogodash, the Stone-Faced King. And he is looking for a way to unify his people. When one day, wouldn't you know it, an opportunity presents itself. Not far from the borders of Dweghom, a mid-sized human settlement found something interesting. See, the Dweghom scouts have observed a lot of people coming and going from the city, religious crusades coming out and going in. And at one point, they saw something that really caught their eye. These humans have found one of the original 12 dragon swords, one of them that was lost forever, or so they thought. Maybe one of these clans went out, left the hold, got into a scrap, lost the sword, they all got wiped out or whatever, and now this artifact has just been passing hands, but now it's right in front of them. Now that is a very tangible prize, and that is not far away. It harks back to the heritage of the entire hold, right? And that's something that can unify it. We all share memories of backstabbing and not wanting to work together, but at the core, all of these Dweghom know their origin stories. And that this is a living, or quote unquote living, it's an actual artifact from that time period. So like, yeah, let's go get it. So Ragnars begins to basically mobilize the entire hold, all the clans that are remaining, and they start banging the drums of war and marching. Now, all that stuff that we just talked about is the setup for the campaign, meaning like the actual missions you and I play to determine how these events unfold. But that's our story to get set up. We have human defenders. Eric sure doesn't want the dragon sword, but it's part of a greater thing that the 100 Kingdoms is doing, so he's tasked to defend it. But the Dweghom want the thing, which I think is a fantastic setup for a battle. Not only do you get the cool models for Eric Schur and Ragnars, of course, but also in the book, there are rules for a few unique regiments. Parabellum calls them storied regiments, which is cool, but basically it's a modified version of an existing unit with some extra rules and a dose of story. So for example, Eric Schur and the 100 Kingdoms gain access to a regiment called the River Wardens, which are essentially just Imperial Rangers. You'll use that same command card. But these are rangers that are renowned in the area of Pravia specifically. That kind of stuff. There's also the Dweghom side has a Rig's personal Thanes, that kind of thing. It's just cool alternate units to kind of spice up your games. But there are a few of them. And then there are 4 scenarios, which is how you tell the story of like all that stuff we talked about before was set up for then the story that you tell with your opponents. Each of these 4 scenarios has a full page setup that kind of prepares you for the battle. And these are great because they give you guidelines for what the battle is going to be like. So, for example, one side is trying to claim a bridge, the other side is trying to deny them the bridge. And so your battlefield will have conditions that make it narrow, or there's a singular center of battle going on. Like, it just kind of lightly tells the story and allows you, the players, to play it out with your full armies. But what's great about that is that it's vague enough that if you're, say, a Spires player, you can use these scenarios. You just say the Spires are going through a canyon pass rather than the Dweghom marching across a bridge, and you kind of get the same idea. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm not going to go through every mission because I do not want to spoil you. Part of the point of the missions is that you can lose them or play them in different orders, and so it won't affect the overall story. So they're not like they're not sequential, is what I'm trying to say. One happens immediately after the other. You kind of float around there, and then at the end, when you determine who the overall campaign winner is, there is a full page spread of like the conclusion of the story based on if the 100 Kingdoms successfully defend the Baron and keep the Dragon Sword, or if the Dweghom manage to assault Pravia and take the Dragon Sword back home. I like it because there's a lot of flexibility, there's a lot of value for new and returning players, and a distinct conclusion for each player. Now, I want to end this video like I end all of mine, talking about why is this cool, right? We talked about a lot of setup, but not necessarily like the story. Well, I wish we had more books like this. Here's the forces. Here's some ways that we make them unique to this story, like the storied regiments. You have some context to the fight, the MacGuffin being the Dragon Sword, and a little bit of work done to tell a story, but you're letting the players tell the story themselves, okay? That is magnitudes different from, say, the 6 Dawnbringer books that Games Workshop put out for $350 that tell you the story and then let you recreate it, right? In this, the Stone-Faced King, we have the setup and then you and I tell the story, which I think is a very empowering thing for players, as opposed to being told the story and here's a few ways that you can play them until the edition changes and we wipe all the rules away. Parabellum has done an incredible job of making this book a valuable resource for new and returning players. Like, there's value here no matter what. I think it's really cool. Highly suggest to everyone, at least check it out. If someone in your gaming group has a copy, thumb through it. At least see how they, as a company, Parabellum, are managing to supplement the game in ways that other companies just don't. I love the fact that this is not a grand scale, setting-wide annihilating event, right? Not everything has to have those stakes. these settings, in the grim darkness of the far future, there's only war. Well, there's a bunch of little ones happening all over the place. That's the point. And the difference is GW is not good at picking out those individual stories. But Parabellum really is. I went through the Dweghom Conquest when they were fighting the Spire. That was exceptionally well laid out. Again, not a setting-wide cataclysmic thing. Doesn't have a ton of long-lasting, meaningful consequences, but it told a good story. It contextualized a lot of units. It set up the factions of why they headed the way they did going into the cataclysm of the Old Dominion. It's just good stuff. So, Parabellum, great job. I hope you all pat yourselves on the back. Go grab a beer or whatever you guys drink in Greece. And friends, if you're listening, just know that I appreciate this product. It'll have diminishing returns if you don't play one of the two factions and you don't want the models. But I do, like I said, I think if someone in your group owns it, just thumb through it to see how other companies are doing stuff, because it's just really cool. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out and listening. I will chat with you all very, very soon. Happy wargaming, friends.